I'll just give you the thumbnail while we're waiting for my two friends. So yeah, I'm a lifelong music educator. I taught for 15 years in the New Jersey public schools. Newark, New Jersey, I taught for a year, and then I taught for 2 years in suburban school districts. I'm a tuba player, middle school band director, and orchestra director, and I spent a lot of time doing general music. And I'll be really honest, when I got a general music gig, I was not excited at all. And so I started using technology, which is what I was using at home, and I loved. And I found that music technology, the kids loved it too. It's literally, music technology was my life raft, teaching middle school general music, which I think most of you would agree before you actually do it. If you're a middle school general music teacher, you know they're the best. They're the best kids, but coming into it, I was scared out of my mind about teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who thought that music was, for losers. At least the school music was for losers. So I am the founder and director of MusicFirst. It's the most exciting thing I've ever done in my career. I got to build a company from scratch. Before that, I was the head of education for Korg, the synthesizer company, and I ran that company for 4 years. That was a lot of fun. I got to meet amazing people. I'll tell you stories over lunch, but yeah, I'm here. I'm really thrilled. I'm going to be presenting a whole bunch of sessions at OMEA tomorrow and Friday and Saturday, so if you're there, please come and say hello. And I have some really good friends with me. Craig Cardiff is a recording artist from Ottawa, Canada, and he works for Soundtrap and does amazing things with students who are kind of in danger of not graduating. He does songwriting. I was finding out about his work last night. He's an absolutely fascinating and amazing musician and educator and thinker. And then who's not here, you'll meet him at some point, is my head of institutional and academic partnerships. Everybody likes long titles. Walt Strayton. I was telling Craig before Walt came to MusicFirst, he was my head-to-head competitor on the battlefield. He ran Yamaha's keyboard division. I ran Korg's keyboard division. And we would often fight over what school was going to buy which brand. And there's a saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So Walt is a dear, dear friend, but when I had the chance to hire him away, I did. So he'll be here at some point. Lifelong. He's taught way longer than I have. You'll see. I look so much younger than he does. Anyway, thanks, Dr. Hill, for inviting us. I'm really thrilled. And of course, to Ryan Van Bibber, I walked in this room, and to me, this is Disneyland. This is an anomaly. This is beautiful. I never taught in anything close to this cool. So Ryan, wherever you are, I'm super jealous. But what I'm going to do today, just so you know, we're going to do 2 3-hour sessions. I promise to keep it engaging and entertaining, because sitting here for 6 hours in front of a computer, you're probably sitting your heart's sunk, going, oh my God, I got to sit for 6 hours doing this. You're going to walk out of here today with a finished podcast that you've created. That is the goal. If not, then you'll know how to do it with your students, and you can start doing it tomorrow. It's in my opinion, it's the latest, greatest, shiniest thing. It's been around for 16, 17 years when Steve Jobs announced podcasting in 2006. People have been doing it for a while, but because of the resurgence and kids getting so into them, especially true crime podcasts, it's the shiniest thing right now, and it's the easiest thing for music teachers to do with their students.
Dr. Frankel, thank you.
Hey,
so
there's
much.
one.
I'm going to go get your partners.
Great.
This team is amazing. They have jumped right in and have been helping. So I'm going to go do what they've been doing so they can come in.
Cool.
Thank you, Dr. Frankel.
All right. So can I just get a show of hands, as I'd like to know my audience, and right now I can only see the tops of your heads. Maybe I can get on a platform or something. How many of you are elementary school teachers? How many of you are middle school teachers? How many of you are high school teachers? All right, now, how many of you are vocal choral people? How many of you are band people? How many of you are strings people? How many of you are general music or music tech? Everybody, or almost everybody. Cool. How many of you have access to Soundtrap? All right, excellent. So I got my baseline. I figured it out. As any
theater person.
We got theater.
a theater. Where's a theater person? Awesome. I promise you, theater person. So I come from a Broadway family, and there too. So I come from a Broadway family. My mom was in 14 Broadway shows. My brother's a Blue Man and Blue Man group, and my sister was in 17 Broadway shows. I was raised on Broadway. I have pictures of Barbra Streisand holding me as a baby. as well as Katharine Hepburn and Angela Lansbury. We could talk over lunch. So I come from a Broadway family. I am the black sheep. I love it. I was the kid who actually went out and made money because my brother and sister ain't got a pot to piss in. But anyway, sorry, I said that out loud and I recorded that. That's on some kind of, anyway, you know what I'm saying. They're actors. Anyway, so I promise to the theater people that I will give you absolutely cool stuff to do with your students as well. Do not feel left out. You're part of my family. All right, cool? All right, so with that, I'm going to give you an overview real quick, and then we're going to jump right in. I promise you're going to have fun. There, I've got like half a light face, half a dark face. I love it. So I've been around for a long, long time. I've been teaching. I teach at Columbia University. I teach all their graduate courses in music technology, specifically for educators. So I am a nerd, OG music tech nerd, and like Ryan's the cool guy, I'm the nerd guy, right? This is such a cool lab. I've been blogging for a very long time. I took a long time off, but I'm now back in the world of blogging. So it seems like everybody has a blog. If you want to go check it out, jamesfrankel.com. I just announced this morning at 6 a.m. that I'm doing a free 5-week podcasting course that you get 10 hours of professional development. It's live. I'm teaching online, and you get my entire podcasting curriculum. JamesFrankel.com. You can just go right on there and. I will take those credit hours. Okay, cool. It's 10 PD hours. You just click on the blog and you'll find it. And then, like every other person with a beating heart at this point, I have my own podcast, right? I'm on episode 87. And I'm going to have Ryan on one. He'll be on probably on episode 88. All that is, by the way, it's not commercials. It's music teachers talking shop. That's it. It's about what are you doing with technology? How is it working? And I'm finally getting to the point where I don't have to talk about the pandemic anymore, but I'm just talking about like, all right, now that we're back and like we're all together in the same room, what are you doing now? For the last 3 years, I've been talking the P word, which I don't want to talk about anymore. But yeah, that's me. I am a teacher first. It's what I do. So when Walt told me that I was coming today to teach a 6-hour podcasting course, that's what I love doing. There are many days I wish I was back in the classroom with my kids. It's fun. It's fun being in the corporate world, but some days it isn't. So really, really pleased to be here today. So what we're going to talk about today, and over the 3 hours, I'm going to kind of structure this. This morning, we're going to do like an hour and a half straight of talking about what, why, and how. Like why podcasting, what is podcasting, and how, and reasons for incorporating, reasons for thinking about doing it with your students. In my opinion, you have to set up the what, why, and how to then go and do it. Otherwise, there's no point. You need to know, like, why is this cool? Why is this important? And then we're going to spend time in Soundtrap today making podcasts and composing your own music. Creating a script. We're going to be writing scripts. By the time we get up to lunch, you should have a plan for what your podcast is going to be. You should have a basic script, an overview of what it's going to be, and we'll set up the music. And no matter what your composition experience is, I promise you that you'll be able to write an intro and outro music in Soundtrap for your podcast. Then we're going to have lunch. After lunch, we're going to actually, depending on, I got to talk to Ryan maybe during lunch, how to record vocals, because there's, 30-something or 20-something of you in here. Recording vocals might be a little messy, but we're going to do it because it's going to be, we'll call it a scratch recording, right? You can go and replace that recording later when you're in a quieter place, but I do want you to have the experience of actually recording into a podcast. Then after that, we're going to talk about some hardware options. You are in Disneyland, as you probably realize, right? This is not what you have in your classroom. This is a specialized class that Ryan teaches. I'll tell you, this is my home studio. There's a laptop. That's it. That's my home studio. And I got I have a Novation Launch Key 37, which is similar to what you have over there. And I brought in my podcasting rig. I brought in what I record all my podcasts on, which is a brand new piece of gear from Focusrite called the Vocaster, which I'm going to talk to Dr. Hill about. I think you guys need them, but that's something else. They're super cool, super easy. So we're talking about hardware. And if you don't want to use Soundtrap, you can use any digital audio workstation, but we think that Soundtrap is the best for kids. And then I'm going to give you tons and tons and tons of project ideas. I'm also going to give you a login to our podcasting curriculum, so you'll have the entire podcasting curriculum to look at. Does that make sense? Everybody cool with that plan? By the time we leave, maybe we'll share, if any of you are brave enough, we'll share some podcasts that you've created. I think it's going to be a fun day. All right, with that, and at any time, if you have questions, I'm Dr. Hill. If anybody has to use the facilities, do they know where they are?
Yes. They're right out out here to the left, just one, like a half block, we'll say, just right down the hallway. Very simple.
And we're going to break for lunch at 10:30. I always, as a teacher, I like to know when is this over, and when am I eating, and where's the bathroom? That's my most important things, especially when you get in your mid-50s. That's important. I want my food. I want my bathroom. All right. So, anytime you have a question, please just stop me. Everybody good with that plan? All right. Again, we're in Disneyland. So, what is podcasting? Does anybody listen to podcasts? Let's start off with there. Those of you that listen to podcasts, would anybody like to volunteer what podcast they listen to? Yes.
I was just listening to one on the way here this morning. It's called Morbid.
Is that a true crime podcast?
It's true crime, anything that is scary. They have a lot of listener tales, so personal experiences from their listeners.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting. I try and stay away from the true crime as much as possible because it's very depressing.
Yep.
But
My wife and daughters, that's all they listen to.
some of them are really good, but their listener tales is what really gets me in, is all the listeners, and they're really happy most of the time. I mean, they're writing about it, so that's a good thing.
Right.
So yeah, it's called Morbid.
Morbid. All right. Yes.
Anatomy of Murder.
So yeah, that's the one my wife listens to nonstop.
If I fly to the West Coast, it's what gets me through the flight because the episodes are long, but you're just into it.
Yep.
Zone out.
Anyone else? Anyone want to offer? Yes.
I listen to This American Life.
Oh my God, I love This American Life. That's so good. So good. Is that Ira Glass?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ira Glass's voice just is just cool, smooth. Yeah, smooth. This American Life is basically, he does vignettes about different people's lives around America. It's a really interesting, very well produced, very well researched. He'll pick a person who is the last flag they're the last flag sewer in Clifton, New Jersey, and they've been doing this their whole life. And it's similar, they're just random snippets of Americana. It's brilliant. It's really good. What?
Do you remember the show he did? I think it was on Netflix.
Yes.
Years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, for one season.
Yeah, it didn't get picked up.
It was really weird to see his face.
Yeah, very strange, because it's not what you expect. You don't. Whenever you see radio people in real life, you're like, that's why you're in radio. But you know what I'm saying. I know that was really mean, but yeah, it doesn't often translate. My favorite podcast of all time is Radio Lab, although once Robert Krulwich left, I don't like it anymore. I love the Jad Abumrad, Robert Krulwich era. If you're not familiar with Radio Lab, it's all about the content. And to this young lady's comment about the listener stories are really engaging, or an anatomy of a murder, it's the content. The better the content, the more engaging. The junkier the content, you just skip it and say, I'm not listening to this, it's a waste. Radio Lab I loved because it was all these really weird stories. My favorite episode of all time was called Falling. And it was all about why do you jump when you're about to go to sleep? Why does your body do that jerk? Like you just fell into a hole, that kind of thing. And it goes all the way back to when humans were living in trees, and it was their way of waking themselves up so they didn't fall out of a tree. We're talking about millennia ago. And then the best part was when a cat, when there's a really interesting span when cats fall out of apartment buildings in New York City, which is where I live. There's a space in the number of floors where if they fall out of an apartment less than 8 floors high, they always live. If they fall out of an apartment over 12 stories high, they always live. But if they fall between 8 and 12 stories, they always die. And the vets were like, why? I know that's really morbid and weird, especially if you're a cat lover. But that kind of stories really, really engages me. I love listening to that kind of weird stuff. So anyone else want to offer up a podcast before we move on? Yesterday, I was in Pittsburgh. A guy talked about a podcast called Dissect. And Dissect is all about music. They pick apart songs, and they pick apart the lyrics, the chord changes, and everything. They deconstruct the song so you get to know about it. Anyway, so we're all podcast consumers. Steve Jobs likes to think that he invented podcasting. He didn't. He invented the word, or I should use past tense, right? So when he came out with the iPod, or when the iPod first came out, what was the one thing it was missing that old school people like me, what was not on the iPod, if you remember, the original white iPod? There was no radio, right? And when they asked, like, hey, maybe you should put a radio on this, Johnny Ive, the guy who designed it, said there's not enough room for a dial, there'd be way too much electronics, the thing would be ugly, we're not doing it. So Steve Jobs decided, hey, our users want radio shows. What if we like put, radio episodes that are pre-recorded onto the iTunes store so that people can download them. Internet radio was invented in the early 90s. Internet radio has been around forever. But Steve Jobs put iPod plus broadcasting and came up with the word podcasting. That was in 2006. It's like TiVo for the radio. It is audio only. Podcasts are audio only. There is no video in podcasts. I have this debate with my daughter. You probably know what I'm talking about. YouTube now has a phenomenon where they put podcasts on YouTube, right? So depending on, believe it or not, the most popular podcast on the planet right now is Joe Rogan's podcast, and it's a polemic podcast, right? You either love him or you hate him, right? I'm not going to talk about which side I fall on, but he often puts his episodes on YouTube so that you can see him talking and see his guests talking. Just so you know, when it's on YouTube, YouTube is a video, the podcast is audio, all right? So when you're making podcasts with students, you're not making videos, you're making audio files only. And I always think back to the old-time radio shows. When I was a little kid, my dad was born in 1929, so he remembers all those radio shows from when he was a little kid. So I used to listen to old recordings of like the Lone Ranger and all these kind of classic radio shows, which you probably couldn't play today because there's a lot of weirdness to them. But those old-time radio shows where there were sound effects, there was music, that kind of thing is really what I like to think of with podcasts. So not just talking, but sound effects and really well produced. So far, so good? All right. I'm going to play a podcast example. So believe it or not, back in 2006, when podcasting first came out for education, I immediately jumped on the podcasting bandwagon and started podcasting with my kids. Within a few months, I had the #1 educational podcast on iTunes with kids. And so here is, believe it or not, now when you look back 17 years later and you say, this was what was so popular? Yes, this is what was so popular. I'm hoping this will play for you. So it's not playing for the stereo, but you can kind of hear it. So it was called This Week in Music History. Only deal is it had to be later than 1960.
Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon had been on the
Which channel?
for 491 weeks, longer than any other album. It still sells amazingly well today.
Set your output to go through the scar.
John
Oh, okay.
Lennon's
I'll do it afterwards.
Imagine album was #1 in the U.S. in 1971, making it his first album to hit the top in both the UK and America. A remixed and remastered version was made available in the new millennium that featured a much cleaner sound.
So these are 7th grade boys.
Rated #1 on the U.S. albums chart in 1970 with the help of the Immigrants Fund. Was the first of the 4 weeks at the top. Their second album had hit the #1 position for 7 weeks about a year earlier. After the band's first album had stalled at #10. George Harrison became the first Beatle to release a solo album when Wonderwall Music was issued in 1968. James Taylor and Carly Simon were married on November 3rd, 1972. Their most recent hits have been That's the Way I've Always Heard It Should Be, Anticipation, Fire and Rain, and You've Got a Friend.
All right, short and sweet. I just want to explain the mechanics of how that happened, because I think it's great to play a recording, but it's even better, in my opinion, to understand how it happened in my classroom. So the way this worked is at the beginning of every marking period of my general music classes, I said to the students, we're going to do a podcast. You're going to do it in groups of 2. And we're going to start podcasting in 2 weeks. We're going to start recording it. Between now and then, you need to write a script. So the first day of the marking period, I went over script writing, and that they were going to have to hand this script into me, and I was going to record, do the editing, revising process, and that when their script was approved, they would go on the date that I told them. So every single Friday of my marking period, the first 15 minutes of class were reserved for a recording session. Because no music teacher has time to schedule podcast recording sessions outside of their instructional time. I've never met a music teacher that's like, yeah, I'll give up my lunch and prep and after school to do that. Sure, that sounds like a good idea. So it was every Friday, first 15 minutes of class, I knew what I was going to do. The kids, during the recording session who weren't recording, had to be quiet. Right? I know that it wasn't coming through the speakers, but if you heard it up close, there's a lot of background noise in it. And I don't really care about that. I just want the kid's script to be recorded. And then I said, who wants to go first, right? And no hands go up. And I said, if you go first, it's an automatic A. Every hand goes up, right? And then what I did is I promised to help those first kids to go. And once they went, because they didn't know the rest of the students had no idea what this was going to go like. When that first group went, I worked with them for the 2 weeks, like, get your script ready, come on, this is how you're going to do it. And when they went up and recorded their script, everybody else's fears went away. They were like, oh, this is going to be fun. And then they just waited for their week to record the podcast. So during the school year, I recorded 40 podcasts this week in music. So it was that's another thing about podcasting is it's one of these like beasts, if you will. Once you start one, you got to keep going. And because if you say, I don't want to do this anymore, and whenever I go to podcasts and they were podcasting like maniacs during the beginning of 2020, and then around July of 2020, that's the last episode. You're like, yeah, you got bored. You stopped your podcast. So with kids, and if you do this the correct way, in my opinion, a once a week podcast that you're just recording kids during your class session, it's not a big investment of time. Right? And for that recording, by the way, and I'll talk about this later, I used a Blue Snowball microphone, a USB microphone. It's about $60. You can get it at Sweetwater, Amazon, wherever. Really cheap and cheerful, but really nice. You don't need, Ryan's got state-of-the-art stuff in here. You do not need this to do podcasting. You literally just need a Chromebook, and you can actually podcast on just a Chromebook. You don't need all the stuff. But to make it sound better, adding a USB microphone is certainly a good thing. All right, so let's move on. So why? So here's the numbers don't lie. By the way, that 467 million is 3 months old. We're now over 500 million people listen to podcasts globally on a daily basis. It's 500 million people are consuming podcasts. And even just at the beginning of the session, when I asked around here, it seems like a bunch of you are listening to podcasts on a fairly regular basis. There are 5 million podcasts on Spotify. Just contemplate that number for a second, right? If you listen to one podcast every minute, it would take you like 30 years to listen to the podcast. It's an absolutely outrageous amount. And it's because, and your name again, the lady that listens to Morbid?
Michaela.
So Michaela said that users are telling stories. Most podcasts are user-generated. They're people like you and me who are not by a record label. They're not famous. They just start making podcasts. And some of them stink, absolutely. And some of them are absolutely fabulous. And some people, believe it or not, make their entire living podcasting, which I find amazing to me. Whenever I hear about these kids that are influencers on YouTube, like opening, or Instagram, opening a thing of makeup and going, look, this is what it looks like. They make their entire living doing that. I'm like, what the hell did I go to college for and get a doctorate when this kid's making $10,000 a month opening up makeup on Instagram, right? Every once in a while you go, what did I do wrong? So 50% of listeners are between the ages of 13 and 34. And of that 50%, 50% are between the ages of 13 and 18. So basically a quarter of podcast consumers are your students. Most kids are listening to them. And it is true that the number, first of all, it's interesting because among genders, when you look at the genders of what gender listens to what type of podcast, a lot of high school boys listen to podcasts that I really wish they wouldn't listen to. It's just filled with toxic masculinity style, this Andrew Tate, Joe Rogan, they're obsessed with this kind of, right? And then it's interesting, a lot of women listen to true crime podcasts. This is research, I'm not just making this up, that there are certain genres of podcasts that are split by gender, which is really interesting. So the point I'm saying is that your kids are listening to these right now. And if you say to them, hey, we're going to make a podcast, if you've never tried it before, we're making a podcast, their eyes will light up because it's a thing they know. They're like, oh, this is cool. You can make podcasts? Actually, yes. And we're going to do that. And then, in my opinion, relevancy and advocacy is the main reason. I don't know how it is here in Columbus, but where I taught in the New Jersey public schools, every single April 15th, which is when budgets were voted on in the town that I worked in, every single April 15th, I was hoping that my program wasn't cut. Even though I was a teacher of the year 3 times, I did all that kind of cool accolades, I was still worried that the music program was going to get cut, always. And I'm sure the theater people, you feel the same way, right? We're always in this like, you know, they're not going to cut the sports program. The first thing they're going to cut is either library or industrial arts, or then they're coming from music. So I was always in this world of, I need to make sure that I am the most important teacher in the school, or at least try. And it is funny, especially because I did a ton of musical directing. The number one thing that principals will show when somebody comes to visit the school is the music program and the theater productions and the art classes. It's the first thing they show, right? But it's also the first thing they cut. I hope that's not the case here in Columbus. It was totally the case where I worked at. So what I'm saying here is if you become the podcasting go-to person in your school, it's not a bad thing. Because if you work with your administration, say to your principal, hey, I'd like to suggest to you that you make a monthly or weekly podcast that you put out on the school's podcast channel. The administrator might go, oh my God, you can do that? Yes, I can. I know how to do it. I went to this workshop and I know how to do podcasting. That principal will look to you as like, oh, this is a key person in the school. If I get rid of that person, does this make sense? I don't know if that works here in Columbus, but I was always angling for making sure I didn't get fired, right? I guess it was bred into me as a little kid. It's the worst thing that can happen to you is you get fired because I have kids. I'm paying for college, right? It's the worst thing. Anyway, so relevancy because the kids already know this, listen to them and love them, and advocacy because you can become the main go-to person in your school. Here's another question, especially for the high school, well, maybe for everybody. How many of you are the resident AV person for your school? Meaning if they need to set up microphones for an assembly, you're the one they call, right? Why? Because you know how to plug in a microphone. Almost no other teacher in the school knows how to do that. So the music person is almost always the AV person. Even if you don't know. By the way, you're like, oh yeah, I know how to do. Yeah, sure. This is a mixing console, 24 channel, no problem. I can do that, right? So I became. In fact, I did have a love-hate relationship because once I started, we did the first year that I went to my last school where I taught 11 years. I did an 8th grade musical, right? Which is, I love doing that. And I was like, we're doing a musical, and the principal's like, really? I was like, yeah. And I was like, but I need 8 wireless microphones. Right, because the worst thing you can have is you can't hear them up on stage. We did Little Shop of Horrors. I need 8 wireless. So she bought these. She's like, you know how to use wireless microphones? I'm like, yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm a music teacher. That was the dumbest. She's like, oh, can you set up the microphones? We have a board meeting and it's in the cafeteria this evening. Can you set up all the microphones? Yep, I can do that. And I was the AV person, and I got 0 stipend for it. So. Relevancy and advocacy. Again, to me, it's all about self-preservation sometimes. All right, so any questions on what I've gone over so far? None. All right, so what I'm going to do now is give you a login, and hopefully you'll all be able to see this and get in. If you are a QR code person, you can do that, but because you're on a computer, if you go to, just type in the URL, demo.musicfirstclassroom.com. I'm going to give you a number. Okay, I thought that was like a reference tone. I'm going to come around and give you a number. Okay, you just have to remember that number. Please, it should be, you guys use this for okay, you're number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, all right? So what you do is whatever number I gave you, it's Hayes, all lowercase, and then the number I gave you. Yeah?
Mine says account not found when I do that.
Oh, can you go back? Let me just make sure. Demo. Yeah, you're in, so just hit enter.
This one?
No, this one. Yeah. Oh, go back. That's weird.
Yeah, it doesn't like me.
Demo. Okay, now click on this one. All right, and then you were Hayes 5, 6? 6. And then the password is music. Are you in Hayes 7 music?
With the dash 40?
No, it's just Hayes 7, and then just the password is just straight music. Okay. I'm just going to come around. You can hit accept all cookies. Are you in? Who's having any difficulties? So Hayes 8 music, and that should be good. And then just click accept all cookies. All right. So you're all in my podcasting course. So in the first 2 weeks of September this year, I locked myself in my house. I turned off my phone, and I wrote this curriculum. And the curriculum I just want to go over is basically, the way I structured it, it is 20 lesson plans that get you from 0 to podcasting. You and your students. So you both can use it. The students and you can learn together. Lesson number 1, let me actually bring it up on the screen. Is there anyone else having issues getting in? Yep. Let me just make sure we get you in. Oh, so go off of Safari, and we're going to use Chrome. You're here, so click. Let's just try this. So you were Hayes 16, but there's an E in there.
Oh,
That should work. Log in, save password, and click accept all cookies. All right, you're in. Okay.
Doesn't matter if I use Safari or not.
Nope, it doesn't. All right. Hey, Ryan. I'm having trouble getting on the internet. So I turned off the Wi-Fi.
Okay. Now, it's, I suppose it's possible.
I have to go to my network.
Well, let's just get you logged in here on CCS Personal, and I'll log you in.
All right, great. So if you want, while I'm getting my computer hooked up to the internet, if you want to look through it, let me explain what the podcasting curriculum is. It is 20 lesson plans. The first couple of lesson plans are why podcasting. The next couple of lesson plans are the hardest part of podcasting, which is writing a script. Writing a script, I don't care who you are, how old you are, that's the hardest part, is writing a script. And then adding directions to it. So it's almost like writing a play where you're adding like stage directions and sound cues and stuff like that. Hardest part. What? Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan. And then after that part, it's then the technical part, like how do you do this in Soundtrap? And by the way, you can use any digital audio workstation. You can use Audacity, GarageBand, Soundtrap, Logic, Ableton. It doesn't matter. I personally think because you have Soundtrap accounts, there's no reason why you would look anywhere else. And the kids have them. They should be using it. Use the tools you have. So then after that, it goes into production, editing, and then the hardware, stuff like that, and then distributing the podcast. Okay? So let me just quickly go over. Oh, I think, there we go. I know why it's doing this now. So if you can all do this with me, we're going to go to reviewing podcasts. So if you can click on lesson 4 that's in, if you scroll down and go to lesson number 4, which is called reviewing podcasts, this is what I would like to do with you. This is a lesson for your students. That kid's got messy hair, I didn't see that. There are printable activities on every one of them. So you can click on, see where it says printable lesson 4. You can click on that, print it out, give it to your students. By the way, I'm giving you this for 30 days to try. right? You can have access. I'm not going to shut off your access. So you can use this curriculum with your kids right now. And I hope you do, because it's free, and it took me forever to write. So that printable lesson, if you click on the link, you get a PDF that you can print. But these are the first. So the very first thing I want you to do is actually do this lesson, okay? We're going to do this activity. And here's how it works. You should see at the bottom a task, like a little pencil and a square that says podcast review. What I would like you to do is pretend you're a student, and let me explain the activity. The activity is, I want the students to talk about podcasts that they listen to. Now, if you're not comfortable sending the kids out to the great wild west of the podcasting world, you can give them suggestions, right? You can come up with a list of podcasts that they might like. How many of you have your own Spotify account? Some of you, not everybody. All right, so let me just show you here. On my Spotify account, so this is the one that I pay for. This is my own. My wife ruins my recommendations by listening to her crime podcasts on my account. If I go to search and look up music education, right, and click on podcasts, I get a ton. What I would love for you to do, because I don't think all of you have podcasting accounts, is we're going to go on a website called Google. So make a new tab, go to the Google, right, and we're going to look up music education podcasts. And then if you scroll down, you should be able to see actual audio files about where it says podcast series, music education. And you can see it says Talking Up Music Education, the elementary music teacher. Click on any one of these podcasts that you see here. We're going to focus on music education because it's an easy topic to pick. And if you click on any of those, so I'm going to click here and say 42 more and say, oh, there's the Music Tech Teacher Podcast. I love Katie. Right? You can go in here and click on her actual podcast and visit it, and you can listen to them. What I'd like you to do is literally spend 15 minutes researching a specific podcast that you find, see if you're able to listen to it, and then complete the podcast review, just a couple of sentences. I'm not asking you to write a whole, but what I am asking you to do is put yourself in the position of the students. You give them podcasts to listen to and then write a quick review. I don't know why this picture. Oh, that's cool. I love that. Is that a doable thing? I know that we don't necessarily have headphones to listen to them, but I would like you to do this. Does that sound fair, or would you like to do something else? So right now it's 8:16. We'll spend the next at 8:30, we'll move on to the next one. So just go and explore a podcast or two. If you already have your favorite, like if you want to do a review on Morbid, please feel free. So if you click on any one of these, like Noodle Loaf, right, and then click on the actual podcast itself.
I feel like
Yeah.
the podcast I was playing over there. Every time I hit play, it would play.
Let's go back, because this is just showing you the picture. Maybe click here, and then play. You can do that to any podcast you want to be. So if you want to look at jazz podcasts, any podcast you want, it doesn't have to be the ones I showed you. Are you finding anything?
Oh, you need to go into settings. Yeah. Because it has.
Yeah. You shouldn't have to sign in to see them, but you can if you want. I'm having them listen to podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
You need to go into settings. Change the sound.
This is Eric.
To the internal.
I can't hear anything.
I don't want to screw everything. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. If you can.
Welcome to
If
episode
you,
86.
I'll tell you what.
Viva Mariachi with our special.
If a couple of things about the sound of the Mac. If somebody has signed on this account before, there's a speaker icon at the top of the computer in the upper right-hand corner near the clock, and you can adjust the volume of the speakers there. Do they need headphones? Because I have a whole set of headphones they can use.
Headphones might be, for those of you that are sensory overload people like myself, you might want to get some,
Okay,
if that's
you
all right,
have
right?
your own wired headphones, you can connect them. There's a little headphone port on the back right of the computer. If you have Apple AirPods, you can connect them with Bluetooth. If you don't know how to do it, I can help you. If you need headphones, I have what I call punishment headphones up here. These are when my students forget their real headphones. They have to use these. They're not the best looking, but they work. And you can feel free to get them. And they're
I'll come and get some for you. How many want them on this side? 2, 3? All right, I'll get you some. Great, yeah. Thanks, Ryan, appreciate it.
no problem.
These are the things you don't think of until you actually say, let's go.
It's an everyday
Yep.
thing. So
I get it. If you can hand me 3,
Okay.
that's awesome. Thank you so much.
There we go.
Perfect, thank
Yeah,
you.
they are punishment headphones.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love some avocado
Do you need a
toast.
quiet? Do
What's
you need a
up?
quiet time and a safe space? Oh, you know what? Let me get you one. I know.
Got it.
Obviously, this one's falling off.
You got another?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much.
And again, there's a headphone port in the back right of the computer. You might have to, hunt for it a little bit, but if you just tilt the computer, you can tilt the computer gently towards you, and it'll go right in.
You may call me Mark. That was great. Thank you.
There's only one hole, so you can't go wrong.
You got it. That's right
You're
there.
speaking to me from the great state of Texas. I am a Prairie View
Other side.
University, which is located north and northwest of.
And don't worry, if you break something, Betty will buy a new one.
That's good. Is everybody good down here? You can hear? You're okay? Are you able to get to a podcast? I am not. All right, so if you click and just search out Music Education Podcast. Okay, hit enter. So then if you click in here with 42 more, just click that little button. All right, and scroll down. You can look through any of these, but if you scroll down, there's actually some that you can click right on if you use the mouse. So here are some that you can. So let's just, if you choose any one of these that you'd like. Here's one that I'm actually on, or the Beyond the Music lesson, any one of them. Just click on them. Then what happens is you should be able to click on an episode. Like if you click on this, you might be able to get right to it to hear it. There. So these are all listenable. If you click on, I don't know what's of interest to you.
If you need help with sound, I'm coming around the room, and you just snag me.
Click on the plus.
Yeah, see what happens when you do that. Oh, never mind.
I'm a sound question.
Click on the actual title, yeah. And then you should be able to play any of these. And if you plug in, I'll give you the, I'll plug it.
It's because you're in the podcast app.
Perfect.
Are they supposed to be in the podcast app or the internet?
The internet.
Okay.
I figured that would be the cleanest way for them to get to them.
Yeah. So. Actually, you don't even need the Wi-Fi because you're hardwired on the internet here.
Here, let me just. Do you mind if I grab? We don't want feed spot.
Oh, is that Katie Wardrobe?
Yeah,
She's the best.
she is.
I met her in New York. Not connected. Okay.
Okay, so we don't want feed spot, right? So if we click on this just to get to this podcast page and click play,
Try it again.
you should be able to hear it.
For private. Let's go to
Right? So you just navigate around, look for a play button, you should be good. By the way, if you want to find one that's theater-based, it's probably more interesting to you, you can go ahead and do that.
What is that? That MusicFirst website, I deleted my tab
Oh, demo.
demo.
It should immediately DEMO. There's an E there. So
Says you're on. Let's see what happens.
good. You're in. So just hit return. Yep. Good.
Thank you.
Oh, it could be from. Okay, so it looks like no one's used this account before. Is this the guest account?
Sure thing.
Ah. Try. Let's try this. See if that works. Maybe background doesn't. Anybody else need help with anything? Theoretically, I think they turned our wired internet off for the moment. I know they were working on the server closet next door. CCS personal. Let's go to guest.
Yeah. It does. It shouldn't matter.
Need help with it? Why don't you try going to the Wi-Fi waves there? Yeah, click on yes. And then go down to CCS.
Still no.
He's got himself in a loop.
What are we doing now?
Just list. What are we actually? What's the activity?
Yeah.
We're listening to a podcast, and then we're going to write a review,
Okay.
a quick little review of what you think about it.
Okay.
So you don't have to listen to the whole thing. It's just really, we're kind of putting ourselves in our
I
students.
don't think the moth is happening for you. I would try a different one.
Oh, that's too bad. That's a great
It is a
podcast.
great podcast.
It's awesome. Storytelling.
With the beat.
How's it going? You find anything? Okay.
So, you know, also you're on Safari. You may want to try Chrome. Okay, let's get you. Oh, okay, it's probably because are you on the guest account? Okay, that's it. Well, no, it's okay. We just have to do a couple of extra things. You can, but there is a Columbus State login I've created for the computer. And you simply have to Columbus State computer and have everything set up. You know what I mean? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'll try it.
Oh my God. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love this room.
Where's the page to go to the podcast review project? How do they
So if they're in the class, the podcasting across the room class, if they on the demo site.
we had to switch out browser.
Oh, okay. Yep, no problem. I'll come around. So if you go to demo, type in demo.
Oh, this is what they had up there before.
Yep.
Demo.music.
Music First classroom. There it is. And then you're the Hayes, whatever the number. Oh, cool. There you go. And then your password is music, lowercase.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got you.
And then you're going to go scroll down to lesson 4. Great.
Well, this is like a, I was thinking I'm making a guest account or something. And so he doesn't send studies.
So about another five minutes or so to just put in whatever you want in that review. It's not homework, obviously. It's just kind of role playing for now, like what your students would do. I still am on sensory overload in this room, Ryan. It's absolutely awesome. I love these lights. I love everything you've done in here. That's cool. The X-ray of the turntables. I'm like, I'm noticing everywhere I turn. I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool.
Poster sales at colleges.
Yeah.
That's where I get this.
Oh, really?
Check out the library.
The library is amazing. That's every single book. I mean, it's truly. This is my favorite, of course.
Oh, of course, yes. That is.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's fabulous.
That's our main textbook.
Yeah, thank you. Your stock's going way up, Ryan. That's fantastic.
So in this box, we're just gonna ask our kids to repeat.
Yeah, so there's some questions. You don't have to answer all of them, but whatever you want to. They would type in there, yeah, this is what I love about this podcast. This is what it is.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
So that's where the response is.
Yep, absolutely. And then if you want, you can click submit response. You know, just put a couple things in there. Dr. Hill, so do they come here after school? Or they bust here, or is this an actual school building?
This is school building.
Oh my God,
Yeah, this is, yeah.
that's a dream.
Yeah, these classes, there.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I thought it was like a center, like where we were yesterday, Manchester Bidwell.
Yeah, no, this is.
That's amazing.
And when we get some time with Brian, just get him to tell you a story of how kids get here.
Yeah,
and
Super cool.
And posting, send some pictures in the company-wide chat.
Oh, good.
That's in March.
I saw that. That's awesome. Oh, I love Victor Wooten. He was our keynote speaker at our conference last year. I absolutely love every word that comes out of his mouth. His whole thing is there are no wrong notes.
Right.
I love that philosophy. Okay, about 2 more minutes if you want to finish up. Again, you don't have to finish every question. Just, getting the idea of what the activity's about. Okay, no matter where you are in the task, if you could just hit that submit response, and we'll move on from here. Obviously, the point of that activity is not for you to, for me to test you, but instead it's for you to give you an idea of what your students will do. Believe it or not, your students will enjoy doing podcast reviews because we've already got feedback from teachers who are using the curriculum, and they're surprised how much the kids write about their favorite podcasts. Yep.
How do you deal with, when you make your own, you release them in the wild,
Excellent question. So because you're a group of adults, and to be quite honest, in a lab like this, I wasn't sure how to get you to them. To be honest, I would have a prepared list of podcasts for them to listen to. Your students.
You can find lists too easy. If you search like podcasts for high school kids, it'll be like 100 best podcasts for high school kids.
There are apps. If you ask them to talk about their favorite podcast, it could be trouble, meaning that it could be that they are picking podcasts that you wouldn't, this might be a controversial name, but if they're picking Andrew Tate's podcast, you might go, ugh, I don't necessarily want that as the reviewed podcast. It's up to you. I'm just putting it out there that guy has a podcast and it's controversial. Let's just put it that way. So what is your name?
Oh, I'm Jason.
So Jason's suggestion is a great one. You can go and search it, but you can also make a link if you're using Google Classroom, Canvas, or Schoology, whatever you use here in Columbus. You could have a link to a page of like, you have to choose one of these podcasts. So there are some amazing podcasts where they pick apart songs, like pop songs that they know. Those are great. Kids love those. I'm sure that Ryan probably has some as well, but the Dissect podcast is absolutely awesome for that kind of thing. So you're going to, in elementary school, you're not going to be like, just go on Spotify and find a podcast. So to your point, it's an excellent one. You need to be the gatekeeper and really vet and pre-qualify where you're going to send them. But Googling, like, looking up, hey, what are the best best podcasts for elementary music students? You will find a ton. And by the way, if you find one, like PBS has one, right? Smithsonian has one. All these different educational and like vetted institutions have podcasts. They all do. So you can send them there as well. NPR has a station for kids. It's in my podcast curriculum, by the way. There's a whole list of, in the materials for every lesson, there's a ton of different podcasts that I recommend. But NPR Kids is great. Absolutely great. Other questions on that? So, this assignment, you would obviously, it's up to you. Is this a home assignment, meaning you give this as homework and the kids do it, or is it an in-class assignment? Because we ran into this issue where some of you are like, I can't listen to 17 podcasts at once. That's going to make me crazy. You have to decide, well, do the kids have headphones for their Chromebooks, assuming they have Chromebooks? If they don't, maybe this is a home project. If they do, yeah, let's do it in class. I'm going to say something really jaded right now. I love activities that take up class time. I know that's bad, but you know what I'm saying. Like if this activity takes 42 minutes, bonus, I know what I'm doing for this, right? Okay, good. So we're on the same page. I sometimes get teachers go, oh my God, how could you say that? I'm saying it. If this takes up 40 minutes of class time, I'm very, very happy, right? So that's what I would do if I were using this lesson, is you listen to podcasts and have to have the review written by the end of the 42-minute class session, right? I'm glad we all got on the same page on that, because sometimes I do get in trouble when I say those words out loud. Is Dr. Hill here? All right, good, excellent. So the timing was perfect. So yeah, you know what I'm saying. Like administrators don't like, oh, this eats up class time. Exactly, and they are, in my opinion, they're doing something cool. Right. So by the way, now as a teacher, what I can do is come in here. I have a whole bunch of your reviews, right? So I can go in and look at them. I'm not going to expose you and put your reviews up on the screen, but you get the idea. Questions on that activity? The reason why I'm starting with that one first is because right now it's just getting our brains into listening to podcasts. Did anybody find a podcast that they actually liked? Yeah. Jason?
I don't know if I'd listened to her whole podcast, but she was doing an episode on like neurodivergent kids in the music classroom and how to deal with all that.
Yep. Others?
How do you get to the review section when you do the review?
So are you in the demo.MusicFirst classroom? Walt, if you can help, demo.MusicFirst classroom, and then it's lesson 4. You don't have to hand it in, but yeah. Yes, question?
I listened to Victor Wooten.
Oh, yeah.
Just starting. I love Victor Wooten.
Victor Wooten is an absolute force in music. He's probably the best bass player alive. He was our keynote speaker 2 years ago, and I was in tears listening to him speak because he talks about there's no such thing as a wrong note. and talks about feeling and passion. He talks about everything other than the technical wizard that he is. It's a real, and he's got 2 great books as well. I strongly recommend. So sometimes you need those. By the way, really important question: what is the difference between an audio file and a podcast? Does anybody know the difference between just an audio recording that's posted on a website and a podcast? All right, I need everyone's attention for a minute. This is a really important, fundamental question. What the heck is the difference between an audio file and a podcast? Because there's a huge difference between them. Yes?
The podcast file is probably smaller because it has to be uploaded.
Possibly, but there's a more important reason. There's a more important thing that the podcast must have to make it a podcast. All right, so for those of you that do listen to podcasts on a regular basis, how do you know when there's a new episode? Notification. So what happens is if you subscribe to a podcast on a service like Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, however you get the podcast, there's usually a little bell, like a thing that goes, hey, there's a new episode of Morbid for you to listen to. You go, oh, cool. And you click on it, right? The difference between an audio file and a podcast is that subscription, the ability for an episodic subscription that the next time an episode comes up, you get notified. And so I'm going to show you this. It's super important, super, super important, because a lot of people just think that podcasts are audio files. So I'm going to my actual podcast page. So this is the MusicFirst podcast, and I'm going to go to the settings page. By the way, I'll talk about this afternoon at the end. I host all of my podcasts on SoundCloud, right? SoundCloud, the reason, I'll tell you, it's cheap. And it does everything I need it to do. I think I pay $39 for a pro account, something totally reasonable. And that gives me unlimited storage, unlimited episodes. And I pay that on an annual basis. So I love it, right? Super cheap and cheerful. But on SoundCloud, there is a little three dots menu over here, right? This 3 dots, that always means more. There's something here. And at the bottom, there's a thing called settings. I'll go over this afternoon, but in here, this thing that I've just highlighted, which you may not be able to read from where you are, is called an RSS feed. Really simple syndication, okay? And what that does, because SoundCloud automatically makes this, all I need to do is share that feed on any service that has podcasts, and every time I post a podcast episode, it automatically shows up on every single service, automatically, because it's waiting for that feed. The feed, this URL, is actually a little robot, if you will, that pushes my episodes out to all the other services. So watch this. So my podcasts are all hosted on SoundCloud, but SoundCloud is the least sexy podcast site there is. Nobody's like, oh, I love SoundCloud for podcasts. They don't. They go, oh, I love Spotify for podcasts, or I love Apple Music. So if I go here and say, oh, let me look up MusicFirst, my podcast site is here on Spotify, but I never touch it. This shows up automatically because of my RSS feed. Same thing on Stitcher, same thing on Audible. For those of you that are lost or like, what the heck is he saying? The main thing about podcasts, and we're going to do this afternoon, is you actually have to take those audio files and upload them to somewhere. Like imagine YouTube, you have to upload your video to YouTube. With podcasts, you have to upload them to a podcast hosting site that makes those RSS feeds for you. You don't just post it on your school website. That's just an audio file, right? But if you post it on a site like SoundCloud that does this, that's what they do. It automatically populates your podcast on every other channel that you want it to be podcast, that you want it to appear on. Does that make sense? If you have questions, please ask questions, because that's a fundamental concept.
You have to add the sites that you want it to go to?
Yes. So what you need to do is make a podcast account on each of those sites that you want the podcast to go to. That's all free. I went to Spotify. I was at Berklee College of Music in November, and one of the students goes, how on earth do you stay up on all this music technology? How did you become a music technology expert? And you know what my answer is? And it's smug, but it's true. I'm just really good at Googling. I'm dead serious. That's how I learn everything is I go, how do you do this? And it tells me. So if you go, how do you post your own podcast on Spotify? There's thousands of videos of kids going, so I want to make a podcast on Spotify. Here's how you do it. You're like, oh my God, a 12-year-old is making a YouTube video on how to post. What I feel, by the way, those days are over. When it comes to technology, I think I'm an expert. I'm not. An 8-year-old is an expert. I'm not. I just know how to do it into music education. When I want to learn stuff, I watch videos made by kids, right? I'm glad you agree. It is totally true. So if you ever, like, if you're like a week or two from now, because adult learning theory says that you're only going to remember about 10% of what you learned today. You're only going to retain it, about 10%, right? So I'm telling you, a week from now, when you're like, what the heck was Jim talking? What is that called? A BSS feed, right? Just Google or go on YouTube and you go, how do you post a podcast on Spotify? 1,800 videos immediately, and just follow them because they're all right and it's free. It's so easy. Cool. Any questions on that?
Is there an option for students to post on Spotify for free? Like a special student account that can host their own podcast on Spotify?
So kids do it, but here's what it depends on the context. So what I would say is that if you're a music teacher wanting to do podcasts with your students, there's two people you have to ask permission first, always. Don't just go ahead and do it. That's bad. First, you go to your IT person. You say, look, this is what I'd like to do. I went to this workshop. Dr. Hill's, we went to this amazing workshop on podcasting, and I'm charged. I want to do this with my kids. Are you cool with me doing this? As soon as the IT person goes, because their immediate response is, ooh, nah. Now you go, no, please, this is going to be great. I love it. Once they say yes, which you got to work on sometimes, depends on who. My IT person hated my guts, and I wasn't a fan of hers either. But once you get that buy-in from them and say, look, I'm going to put this on SoundCloud. This is what we're doing it for. I'd like to do it the right way rather than me going and just going rogue. Then the IT person goes, okay, I'll work with you, hopefully. Then after that, you go to your administrator for your building and you say, I would like to create a podcast page for my music department. Your administrator, 99,000 times out of 99,000 times, will go, oh my God, that's such a great idea, because they love the idea of podcast relevancy, advocacy. Look at what we're doing in our school. They'll love it. But it's the IT person that you have to make sure that you're doing it the right way for the school district. Please don't go rogue and do it on your own and say, oh, Jim told us to do this, right? Because and Dr. Hill's here, so I'm serious on that. Well, you need to go the right route with your IT people, because they probably, maybe somebody in your district like a Ryan Van Bibber is already doing it, and there's already a channel, right? But what my suggestion is, and this is what I did in my school, I did not ask permission. I got in a ton of trouble. I made Dr. Frankel's podcast page. I used a site called Podomatic, which was the only place you could post podcasts back in 2006. And I had a parent come to back to school night, and I was showing them the podcasts that the kids make, and the parents said, why the heck aren't the kids doing this in other classes, right? And I was really smug back then. I was like, I don't know, ask the other teachers. Because I was like, right? Everybody should be doing this. But I was like, ask the other teachers. I got in so much trouble for that comment because the IT director wanted to cut my head off. I begged for a smart board for 3 years. My last day of teaching, December 23rd, 2007, they installed the smart board on my last day. That was her little, FU before I walked out the door. It was wonderful. I think they were happy to let me go. So with all that experience in mind, get permission from the IT person. Sorry, Dr. Hill. Get permission from the IT. I got colorful language, but at least I abbreviated. Get permission from the IT person, get permission from your administrator, and then go forth. Okay? And my suggestion is have a music department podcast page for your school. And to your question, the original, is that get all student podcasts into that channel through the school-sponsored channel rather than the kids doing it on their own. Because they'll do it they probably are already doing it on their own. Yeah, question?
Should we assume along with video recording that we should probably get parental consent as well?
So here's the deal, and I'm sure it's the same here in Columbus. Almost every school district in America makes parents sign 2 forms, among many. One is a media release form, so if their child's photo is taken for newspapers, it's cool. And then the other one is the Internet Acceptable Use Policy, which means that students are allowed to use the internet and do stuff like that. That's why you ask your administrator, I want to do this because it's CYA. As long as the administrator goes, yes, we can do this, then you don't need permission. But let me make this super, super vividly clear. The one thing you should never do in a podcast, ever, is have the students say their real name, ever, on a school-sponsored site. No way. No names. Because there's freaks out there. They go, oh, this is Grover Cleveland Middle School. Her name is Susan, and she's in music. I'm going to go find her, right? So no names. If they have to make names, make them pseudonyms, make them composers' name, make them musicians' names, make their names up. As a father of 2 daughters, I'm very, very concerned about the internet. And so that's my suggestion, is anonymize the students. Cool? Any other questions on that? All right. How's everyone feeling? We're a good solid hour in, almost hour and a half. Everyone's feeling all right? Can we keep going? If you need to take a break, feel free to go on your own to use the facilities, but I'm just going to keep teaching until 10:30. Good? All right. Excellent. So far, so good. So the next thing we're going to do is launch Soundtrap. So if you go up, I'm pretty sure this will work in Safari, but if you go up to the Software tab, up here in the top left corner, your Software tab is black, but there's a thing that says Software. If you click on Software, you should get a whole bunch of software pop down. Okay, so it could be that because you're using Safari, it's not going to allow Soundtrap to launch. So, yeah.
I don't know if all of us have it, but if we log in through Clever, like for our district, we can get to.
You can get to Soundtrap on your own?
Through Canvas. At least the music teachers can.
All right, so are you on Chrome and it doesn't let you in? Oh, well, that's fun. Can you go into Clever? If you go into Clever and log in, you should be able to get to your Soundtrap account.
Canvas, and then,
Let me just.
at least the music teachers do. I don't know about the theater
Get
teachers.
access for the theater teachers.
Do you know how to get into Clever?
Clever.com. Just type clever.com.
Introducing
Rhythm templates. I should have listened.
And then you
Teacher, staff.
click login.
Type your school name.
Are you able to get in through this?
But we do this every day.
Okay, all right, great.
Sign into your email and then click on Clever.
You might need to type Arts Impact.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. Sign into your email.
There you go. Click on that.
Once you sign into your email, you can get into Clever.
Everyone log in here.
Click that.
I'm going to.
Type in all your fun stuff.
Sorry, folks. I guess it's blocked on the.
This was my lesson plan of the day for like a month. Getting the kids.
How to get in?
To getting in.
Then you gotta go to Canvas.
Oh, seriously? Oh dear.
Hit log in as a
And then you click on one of your classes and then you go right in.
Okay.
and go to the district.
Sorry, folks.
Make sure you do the one.
Oh, you're in. Good, 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 good. Man, you gotta run the gauntlet to get into this thing. Fort Knox. Can you click on that? Does that Soundtrap for music classes?
You should just take me straight in as usual.
Yeah, you should be. Yeah, you're good. Awesome. You're in. Were you able to get a?
I just got here.
So, no, go.
Okay, cool.
As long as you're signed into your email, then go to Clever.
Thanks for being flexible.
Yeah, once you get to Clever, just click on it and you should be signed in already. You don't have to sign in Clever. Once you're signed into your email, you're
Yep.
already.
Is there a way for me to
simultaneously leave everybody's project?
No, not simultaneous. It's a pain in the ass. Yeah, sorry, I said it out loud.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, it's annoying. It would be awesome if they had a clear all or something like that.
I got projects with my
Yeah, I do too. I got from all my students. It drives me nuts.
Yes, yeah. No, it's just been a while.
How we doing?
Technically, I'm not a teacher. I'm a student teacher. So.
Are you able to get in?
I'm probably going to just go through yours.
All right.
My credentials, maybe.
If Clever would load.
See that big button?
There we go.
Yeah, click that. You'll be good.
All right. Thanks for your help. Appreciate it. Everyone's in?
Oh, yeah, we're
good.
Use that login, but those work with me. If that's okay.
Okay. Yep. Everyone on this side okay? Not yet. We're just chilling there. Just want to make sure. I mean, you can if you want. Sorry. Everybody. Did you get a login?
I gave him mine.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're not in Canvas. Go to the district page on Canvas. All right, Clever. Sorry.
Wow, man. I don't think I can remember all that.
District, right there. District.
All right, so while we're getting here, everybody, and I appreciate your flexibility because getting into software is sometimes difficult. Here's what I'm planning on doing with you. All right, we're going to do a quick overview of Soundtrap, just like a little quick tour for those of you that have never used it. Right? For those of you that have used it, you can play. What I'm going to do is a quick tour of Soundtrap, and then what we're going to do is go into another one of the lesson plans as a student, because as students, there's a whole sequence of lessons for them learning how to use Soundtrap. But for right now, I'm going to give you a tour, and just in the spirit of learning, I'd love for if you could just watch the tour, and then I'm going to give you time to play. Does that make sense? Adult learning theory says that you can do about 10 minutes, 15 minutes max of talking, and then you need about 15 minutes of playing, right? So that's the way I usually structure stuff. So I'm going to show you now how this whole thing works for podcasting. So if you want to play along with me, you're certainly welcome to, but just make sure that you have headphones on. I'm just going to wait till everyone's on so that I'm not.
Do we need to go in the studio?
Yeah, and we're going to.
There we go. Got it.
All right. Good.
There we go. I'm good.
And then
Just click on it.
is it
Then you go up to the Soundtrap on the.
district page, and there should be a Soundtrap.
You don't want to do that middle thing. It's all weird.
Okay, cool.
Do you have to go into Canvas or?
Yes.
Yeah. So scroll back up. Canvas.
Click on Canvas. Then you'll see my classes.
Okay. Again, just in the spirit of teaching, if you can make sure that your computers aren't making noise or that you have your headphones on, what I'm going to do now is give you a quick tour of Soundtrap, not only the podcasting part, but the music making part, which is, to me, the most exciting part. But podcasting thing, it's kind of funny. All right, so I'm entering the studio. And when you enter the studio in Soundtrap, by the way, you are immediately presented with two options. You can either do a music project or a podcast project. I'm going to say something crazy. You can absolutely make podcasts in the music one. No problem. The difference, just so you know, between the music and the podcast is that podcast has a transcription feature. Most educators do not realize how cool the transcription feature is. I'm going to show you in a moment. It is incredibly cool, the transcription feature for editing. Because I don't know about you, but every kid I've ever met says the word like every 5 words. And if it's not like, it's right? And it's so, and like, you know. So it's either like, so, or you know. Like, so, you know, right? And as adults, when you see a red light recording you, your brain freaks. So you fill up the dead air. That's what your brain is doing with like, so, you know, is that you're filling dead space. So with kids, it's a lot. But what I'm going to do is show you, I'm going to go in first to the music side. So if you can all, if you're already in there, click on music. And this is what so by the way, so I just realized now, especially for the gentleman recording the video, the reason why I have this white box on my screen is that QuickTime is only recording what's in the white box. So it's going to be a weird video, but I think it's okay. Just so you know, I'll give you a tour, okay, of Soundtrap right now. Here we go. Please watch, pay attention. On the top, you've got a menu system, a menu structure. There's a file. The file is how you're going to be saving and exporting, okay? There's an edit button. The edit button only works if you have stuff in the tracks. So edit button should have nothing on it. Settings. The settings button is for if you're plugging in devices into Soundtrap. So the MIDI settings, by the way, MIDI settings are if you have a keyboard plugged in. So in this incredible lab that we're in, the keyboards would probably show up in the MIDI settings. What's really great about Soundtrap, it's a website that you can plug hardware into. My brain melts when I hear that. It's a website that's hosted in Stockholm, Sweden. And when you press a key, it's literally sending a little message all the way to Stockholm going, yeah, Jim wants to play a middle C right now.
The MIDIs won't work here because we're on Safari. It needs Chrome.
It needs Chrome. We're going to do all that stuff after lunch because I gotta like go in here and make sure that everything's working for you. So I'll be spending lunch in here.
I do have a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
So right here, where it says keyboard and the musical typing.
Yeah.
If I turn that off, then my MIDI keyboard will actually.
Excellent question. So what's your name?
Mark.
So Mark asked about this musical typing. Just so you know, all that musical typing is when you play or create any type of piano or synth track, automatically something pops up from the bottom that looks like a keyboard, and every key has a letter name on it so you can type it. That's all musical typing is. It's not anything to do with MIDI. I strongly recommend leaving it on because if kids don't have a keyboard at home, right, and that setting is turned on, by the way, kids can do it. I can't. I cannot play chords pressing typing keys. My brain just goes, nope, that's not how we do this.
You get used to it. I do it all the time.
Yeah, all right. Well,
If you are at a station and every station has a MIDI keyboard, there is a button towards the center on the back of your MIDI keyboard, and you can flip it on, and your MIDI keyboard will come on and interact with your drums.
We're going to be using the hardware after lunch so that I can maybe talk with you and yeah. So yeah. Anyway, we're just going through the menus right now, and then over here. There is this is the undo button. I don't know if you can see where I am. There's an undo and a redo. There's a save. There's a loop and a download. But over here it's kind of cool. There's the day and night button. They do this, in my opinion, because there's another program out there that's free called BandLab. And BandLab is that color. So they were like, you know what? We'll make ours look like BandLab too. Haha. So they went from white to, that's literally why they did it.
The dark lets you see your bar lines a whole lot easier.
Yeah, in my 53-year-old brain, I love the black mode because it's easier to see. That's just, the white mode is a little overwhelming. And for video, the white balance is probably a horror story. So then there is a share button, an upgrade button, which we're not going to look at. But then on the extreme right side, there are 3 buttons. There's a notes button. The notes button is the loop browser. The loop browser is going to be where your students compose from. Because in a podcast, you know, if you're teaching composition already, then no problem. You know what to do. You don't have to. But most teachers are not teaching composition on a regular basis. They're not. They're teaching their musical curriculum, and they're using composition as some kind of way to extend the learning, synthesize the learning, that kind of thing. So I love the loop browser for kids just making really quick introductory music. by the way, there are many other really cool sites. One of my favorites is called premiumbeats.com. Right? Premiumbeats.com is where I get all my stock music for my videos and my podcasts. You pay $39 and a real human being has composed it, and they get $39 and you get to use that music any way you want. I love contributing to the art form that I teach, right? So I do use that. But have the kids use their own, make their own music. I'm gonna show you a Soundtrap feature that they just launched last week. Literally last week. In the Loop browser, if you look up here under search loops, there's keyword and then there's song or artist. This is brand new. It's an AI algorithm that if you put in an artist that you like, it should show up loops that sound like that artist, which is freaky. So I'm gonna put in my absolute favorite artist of all time, and I say that tongue in cheek. I'm putting in Justin Bieber. The Biebs, I'm a believer. So if you put in Justin Bieber, right? I'm just gonna make sure you can hear me. So I'm gonna go here to my sound output and pick the Scarlett. Right, here we go. Here's my beautiful girl. Hey, right? I could sound like Justin Bieber. Hey. So if you put in, by the way, if you show this to your kids, they'll freak. By the way, I've done everything. I put Fetty Wap, Drake, Grateful Dead. I'm a Deadhead, so I put Grateful Dead. It's garbage what they come up with. But the kids will go nuts if you show them this, because if you say you're going to make a podcast about your favorite music, and they put in they put in Cardi B, right? Their favorite rap artist. It's going to sound like Cardi B. Their intro music will sound like Cardi B. By the way, the kids were immediately like, oh, because they think they wrote it. They didn't, but they think they did, right? By the way, there's nothing wrong with letting them think they wrote it, right? Because they get like, oh man, listen to this beat I made, right? I love getting kids all hyped up with that kind of stuff. So please use that song artist. It's brand new, just launched last week. I think it's totally awesome. Then what I'm going to quickly do, and then I'm going to give you some time to play, don't worry, is that there's a collaborate button. What's really cool with collaborating in Soundtrap, a lot of ensemble directors use the collaborate feature in Soundtrap to make those like recordings during the COVID times where they couldn't get together in person, so the kids were recording remotely and making quartets or duets, things like that. But believe it or not, in the world of podcasting, this is totally awesome because you can record the interview and each participant is in a separate track, which is fantastic for podcast recording. So if you want to invite somebody to a recording. The way I do all my podcasts is I do it over Zoom. And the reason is that my Soundtrap account is an education account, and I'm not allowed to invite outsiders, right? I can't do it. It's not allowed. But if you're using your Soundtrap account within Columbus City Schools or your Soundtrap account, the kids can interview each other, no problem, because they're members of the same community. But you can't invite outside people. So that's why I use Zoom to do it. I'm about to switch to a program called Riverside, which I think is absolutely fantastic. It's just better audio than Zoom. But that collaborate feature in terms of podcasting is great for the kids being able to record themselves, and both students have their own audio track, so you can go in and fix those tracks if anybody messes up. I'm going to show you something now that you probably didn't know. Quickly, here's another feature that was relatively new, about a month and a half old. This is the comment feature. So a gentleman down at the end of the row here said, hey, I have like 100 million projects that I've been invited to. How do I get out of them, right? If the kids do invite you to their podcast, which is important for assessment, you can make comments. They're bubbles, and it's during the audio track. You just say, hey, why did you say this? That's totally wrong. Mozart was not born in 1844. Maybe you have to rethink that, right? So these comment bubbles are great because the kids instantly see them and they can go in and fix them. I love not writing. That's what I love. An assessment, like having to write report cards is I love you can also do it with an audio recording. Make a little track like teacher comment track and go, what are you talking about? That's not true. That's absolutely wrong. So you may need to go and think that. Wynton Marsalis is not Louis Armstrong's son, You might think he is, but he isn't. Anyway, so that's the comment feature. What I'd like to show you now, you're just getting the sun out of your eyes, right? Sorry. Sorry about that. It's always a good, fun time. I'm going to make a new project, and I'm going to make a podcast this time. And I'm going to, once I make a podcast, in the bottom left, a little transcript button comes up. I'm going to add a new track. I'm going to let you play in a minute. I'm going to add a new track, add voice. You're not going to be able to record your voice right now. We'll do that after lunch. But what I'm going to do is make up a random statement and make some silly things in it. Here we go. I think, let me make sure my audio input is correct. One second. I just have to make sure that I'm actually going to be able to record. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1. All right, good. Here we go. Here comes my beautiful recording. Hi and welcome. On this week's episode of I'm in the coolest music technology lab I've ever been in, I'm going to be interviewing Ryan Van Bibber, the teacher here at Fort Hays, whatever this really cool school is called. I'm sorry, I know I'm in Fort Hays. Thanks for listening. Bye. Right? So I messed up a little bit. Right? Watch this. If I click on the transcript feature down here in the bottom left corner, we're going to use this after lunch. If I click on transcript, it says, which track would you like to transcribe? For those of you that are not familiar with what transcribing is, it will take that audio file and print out a text file. So what it's doing now, it's listening to my recording, and there it is. If you look up here, if the sun isn't in your eyes, it says, hi and welcome. On this week's episode of I'm in the coolest music technology lab I've ever been in, I'm going to be interviewing Ryan Van Bibber. It spelled it right. The teacher here at Fort Hays, whatever this really cool school is called. I'm sorry. I know I'm in Fort Hays. Thanks for listening. Bye. Right? So absolute garbage podcast. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen about what I'm about to show you. And I bet many of you didn't know it was in there. In this transcribe feature, if I say, you know what, I don't really want this to be on the air, whatever this really cool school is called, I can go in here, highlight it, and delete it. And say, oh, I don't want to say I'm sorry either.
Does it delete the audio?
Yes!
Sick.
So watch, now I'm going to play the recording. Thank you, Jason, for realizing just how sick that is. Right? Here we go. Here's my recording now. Hi and welcome. On this week's episode of I'm in the coolest music technology lab I've ever been in, I'm going to be interviewing Ryan Van Bibber, the teacher here at Fort Hays. I know I'm in Fort Hays. Thanks for listening. Bye. Okay, can I just say that should make your brain hurt a little bit? The fact that at the bottom left corner, when you're in a vocal track and you've made the recording, you have to be in a vocal track. It's the only one that'll do it. We're going to do this after lunch, so please don't try doing it right now. But after lunch, once we get everything hooked up, that transcribe feature shows up, and there it is. What I love about that is I interviewed Scott Rush, right, for a guy that wrote All the Habits of a Successful. Brilliant music educator. It's 2 podcasts ago. And he called me. I sent him like a preview, like, Scott, please listen to this, make sure it's cool before it goes live. And he goes, I said like 47 times. Can you please go in and delete every like? I was like, yeah, that's no problem. I did not record it in Soundtrap, right? Because I recorded it in Zoom, right? And you have to record it in Soundtrap for that feature to work. And I was like, oh my God. I didn't think of it. I should have when I recorded it, but I had to go in and listen and like stop, cut, join, listen, stop, cut, join. So the fact that there's a transcribe, this made me cry because I realized I just waited I wasted 3 hours of my life listening to Scott Rush say like, or waiting for Scott Rush to say like. He's a sweet guy. But he literally said, I counted 47 likes. I was like, did you time code them? That would have been good. No, can you get rid of those? I was like, oh my God. Yeah, no problem. I love you. That's great. Anyway, so that transcribe feature, if you haven't seen it before, is absolutely amazing. And if kids are singing, it does the transcription on their singing too, and you could cut out whatever they mess up. How cool is that? Thank you, Soundtrap. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I've got an hour and a bit. Let's get rid of this. What I would like you to do now is just to reinforce the concepts, is everybody, if you're not in a podcast project, if you're not in a music project, create a music project, because we're going to think musically first. File, new. Don't save if you don't want to, and just click on music. And then go up to the loop browser, the 2 notes up there. If you want, by the way, I'll just show you quick on how to, if you go to just keyword, and in the loop browser, I'm up here in the right-hand side, you go to the keyword option, X out originals. You can go in and say, hey, what kind of music do I want to create for my podcast introduction? So the assignment right now is purely to explore. We're going to be making a 30-second podcast episode introduction that we're also going to use at the end as the outro. So an intro, outro. What I would like you to do is play, purely play. I'm going to go in just to show you how this works. I'm going to say, you know what? I would like a EDM style, and I'd like to start with an EDM beat, right? You have to keep clicking the X to clear out the filters. So I'm in electronic dance music beats, right? And I go in here, I go, let me hear this. I'm like, do I like this as a podcast beat? Yeah, I do. You can either double click it and it'll show up. By the way, if you double click it, it automatically loops it, right? So there's a looper tool over here. If you look here where my cursor is, there's a little thing that looks like a circular arrow. Uncheck that, or else you're just going to get an 8-measure loop that's going to go over and over. So you click on that, and then what you can do is extend this in the upper right-hand corner to however long you want your piece to be. Oh, that's always fun. And just so you know, if I said I want you to compose a 30-second piece, right? There is at the bottom here, in the bottom corner on the left-hand side, it's going to tell you how long the piece is.
You can also change to time up in on the timeline. You can change it from bars to seconds.
Right, so up here, and on the very top, you can click on, wait, hold on, that's the grid.
On the grid settings, at the very bottom, you can change to time instead of beats.
Oh, there you go. Thanks, Jason. The very, very bottom of the, let me just show that to you. This little, looks like a flower. It's a cog. If you click on that and scroll all the way to the bottom, it says time, and that tells you how many seconds you have. So right now I'm at 30 seconds already. That's great. So what I'd like you to do, once you get in that beat or something like that, you can exit out and say, now I'd like an EDM synth, and go in and go, do I like this? No. I do too. It's absolute garbage. So if you put this in, what I'd like you to do is spend the next 15 minutes or so putting together an introductory piece of music for your podcast. Even though you don't know what your podcast's about yet, I'd like you to just get a little experience composing a 30-second introductory piece using only the loops for now.
Do you want any specific amount of tracks or anything?
Nope, whatever you want. It's pure open playtime. 30 seconds long. That's it. Loops only. Don't try recording your voice. Don't try recording keyboard, because it'll cause a huge pandemonium with trying to get the hardware and the software all working together. I'm going to do that over the lunch break. Right? So have fun. About 15, 20 minutes of playtime. If you have questions, just raise your hand. I'll be around to help. Is there any water? All right, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a lot of time.
I'm fascinated by first of all, you're doing okay.
All right, yeah.
I'm fascinated by the disparity between some of these people who
know nothing.
In this world and this other guy. Some of these guys are just like, how do I get
Lost.
to the phone?
Right.
You know,
That's the nature of the beast.
There's a lot of table setting around right now. So. Oh,
untouched.
I'm gonna go get some bottled water.
Okay, but that's fresh
All
and
right.
untouched.
I'll leave that for you. I'll take a bottle. Thanks, Ryan. You're a very, very sweet person. But yes, I completely agree with you.
Anything else you need?
No, we're great. What I wanted to be able to do after lunch is for them to be able to play stuff in and record. Is there a way for, or even sharing a microphone,
Do you want me to just bring a bunch of mics over?
if it's doable?
Yeah, because we have the interfaces. What we'll need to do is, okay, I'll have to get the 1/4-inch adapters and microphones. I think we have enough for everybody.
Really?
So,
That'd be awesome.
I wonder if it ought to be a paired up kind
Maybe,
of thing.
yeah, maybe paired.
no
We'll
problem.
do
What time
partners.
is that?
11:30.
No problem.
So we're only going to do half the computers need a microphone
Okay.
because I'll have them work in groups.
Okay, let me count. Let's see.
Two,
Well, we've got 7 on each side. 14, 16.
8, 7 microphones, 9 microphones.
Okay, no problem. That's easy.
You're the best. Thank you. Wow.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Thoroughly appreciate it.
This is flavored. Can you?
It's fine.
Real quick?
Totally.
And I will go get some more.
Awesome. This is great. That's all I need. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, just raise your hand. My two amazing theater people, if this is brand new ground for you, have fun, explore. Oh, this is awesome. Holy mackerel. Oh my God. Will this do? You're the best, man. That's amazing.
So I'm missing one. I don't know what I did with it, but it's around somewhere, I'm sure.
That's fantastic.
It's 758. What do you got?
Most of them are
Yeah.
S50s. They got a couple of knockoffs. So I would say there's a church, a Methodist church that closed. I used to go to it.
Right.
So they gave me the key and they said you can take whatever you want because it's being bought by a tattoo shop at the end of the week.
Oh my God.
And so I took their whole sound system.
Of course.
Yeah. And it had some. That's where the knockoffs came from. But the SM58.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate your help, Ryan.
Oh no, I'm
Seriously.
happy to do it.
I'd be dead on arrival. Yep. So if you click on the click X here, and these are all, so then you click
wanted the
the
Justin
genre and then the instrument.
Justin Bieber thing again.
Oh, so if you want to do
I was
that,
already
click in there, type Justin Bieber. Whoa. Can you click here again?
X.
Yeah. Go to song or artist. Click on this little there. Good. Now type in Justin Bieber. There we go. Good. There you go. So that's all Justin Bieber stuff.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So do you do a lot of this stuff with your kids? Seems like you know this stuff inside and out. Cool, thanks. Oh, cool, Genesis? That's awesome. I don't know if it'll sound like Genesis, but that's kind of a hard one. Probably all synth rock.
I've also got headphone splitters for the 1/4 inches, so that 2 people can plug in.
That might not be a bad idea. How many of those?
30.
Okay, all right.
I got plenty of them.
Let's keep that close by. I think the co-op running.
So do another 10, 15 minutes of this, and then we're going to move on to the next activity, and that'll be the final thing we do before we go to lunch, and then the next activity.
You can fade this out.
The headphones, so at the moment, they're plugged into the back. But you'll be adapted from the bottom. So when you put them on, plug them into the interface, it's going to require for her to change the output settings on the computer to start it. And then we'll put the lights and cables in there.
And that actually should be a very simple, actually, straight up. That should be, from my perspective, would be actually a hand done.
Okay.
As somebody
So do you want them to pick it up, or you want?
Yeah, no, I think we got to take them all the way through.
Okay.
But in a full.
Oh, thank you. Thoroughly appreciate it.
Sorry, I forgot.
So based on my reader's room and talking with Ryan, my suggestion is that he has all these adapters that we go to a co-op setting also with headphones and that kind of thing, but I think we got to take them through step by step.
I'll do that after lunch for
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
but
But
yes,
But the point being, plug this
Like,
in.
we
do
won't
this.
do it for them.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll walk them through it.
absolutely.
And I can help with that.
Great.
What-
That'd be
and-
great.
Yeah, no problem.
The more hands on deck, the better to get
Yeah,
that
yeah.
done.
But the point being, I think it has to be Lego blocks.
Yep. Oh, yeah. No problem.
Well, there's another water there.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
What we're going to do next is script writing, so there's no more gear until after lunch.
Are they doing it on paper?
They probably all have access to Google Docs or
Because
something.
one thing I like to do, especially when they've been sitting in front of screens for a long time, is get them out in the hallway, get them on the cafeteria
Oh.
table, get them in the space. They can go anywhere they want.
Well, let's do
And
that.
then they brainstorm, gets them up. gets
Yeah,
them
yeah,
moving,
let's do
blood
that.
flowing.
Do we have, is there paper I can provide for them? Or?
Probably. Let's see.
Is there, I'm just whiteboarding
I'm
with you.
thinking in my head.
All right.
Is there an activity end game where at the end of the day,
I had a purple notebook.
the teams put forth a 1 minute, their own 1 minute podcast?
Yeah, we're going to play at the end. They're all playing their podcast for each other, right? So it'll be like a gallery at the end.
I have a ream of plain paper.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
I don't think we need a ton, maybe 2 pages each. Or just, yeah, perfect. All right, so once they're done with this activity, I'll set them loose and they can go anywhere in the building.
Anywhere in the building.
All right.
If they want to go.
And we'll come back for like 10, 15.
Yeah, and they can use the studio too. It's
Great,
no problem.
cool, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I did.
Okay, about another 3-4 minutes, and then we're gonna talk through this one, and then next activity, and I think you're gonna like the next one. I don't know if it means as much to you here in Ohio as it does to me as a New York Jets fan, but Tom Brady just announced his retirement.
Again?
He said, and this time for good. Is
Oh, okay.
exactly. After he destroyed his marriage, he said, well, maybe that wasn't worth going back and getting humbled and what a jerk. I'm a Jets fan, so I hate him. So Are you guys Browns fans here, or is there a nearer city?
It's a weird mix. It's Bengals, Browns.
Bengals, Browns, right. So Bengals were amazing this year, absolutely. That was a terrible game, though. What a and that ref was definitely on the side of the Chiefs. End of story. As a non-biased watcher, I was like, this ref is playing for the Chiefs. Garbage calls. Although that Osai, that poor guy, everyone likes to blame him. It had nothing to do with him.
No, it was
The previous set of downs was pretty bad. And that third down non-call. I mean, what a terrible way for them to lose.
every video, like every person I've seen talk about it, like it was trash, like all of it.
It was. It really was. I watched both games, all of them, and the Eagles beat the living crap out of. I mean, that was a trouncing, but I really believe the Bengals should have won. All right, 2 more minutes. Are you guys closer to Cincinnati than, or is it like?
It's like an hour and a half from
Yeah.
here. It's like 2.5 to Cleveland-ish.
They're both.
So it depends where you were born, basically, which one you.
Really, really
Yeah, so Jets and Giants play about 3 miles apart. Actually, no, they play in the same stadium. But I'm a weird Jets Yankees fan. Very rare. It's usually Jets, Mets, Yankees, Giants.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's the norm. But I was born in 1970, so it was prime Jets and prime Yankees. So my dad, when I was 4 years old, told me I had to pick my team, and I wanted to be a Steelers fan. He's like, "No way."
That's right.
Mean Joe Green, Terry Bradshaw, and then like, "Nope, you got to be a Jets fan," because the Giants were awful. Okay, if you can wrap up and just give your attention up here. For some reason, call me old school. I like being at the front of the classroom. I just would like quick reflections on how you think your kids would do with that activity, and how you found that activity. Is it fun?
Yes.
What do you think about the loops? Did anybody try the artist loop way, or, I mean, what? I just love to hear feedback. Like, how did you like that activity? Yeah.
I tried Brad Paisley, which was great because it gave me like steel guitar and stuff.
Mhm.
But then all of the drum options were like EDM breakbeats.
Right,
and it
not
didn't make
country,
sense
not
with it.
country.
Yeah.
So they need to do some work.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's what happens is when because there's not a lot of country on here. There's not a lot of folk. There's no bluegrass. I'm going to see Green Sky Bluegrass tonight. I can't wait. It's some of my favorite, but there's nothing in there for it. So yeah, they're definitely kind of, what is that, like when you go bowling and there's bumper bowling? You know, there's only, that's what the loops are in my opinion. They're like, there's one lane and it's really pop music-y. So yeah, good point. How was it? Did you have fun? I personally think that all teachers should spend some time during the week composing, should be given some time, because in my opinion, it's the most therapeutic thing you could possibly do, is take an hour for yourself in kind of a mindfulness minute, social emotional learning. Just take an hour for yourself and just compose. Remember why the heck you got into this. If you're a theater person, it's like write a scene. You know, the idea of creating is, I think, essential to being a musician, to being an artist. So I think, how do you think your kids would like this, to switch the lens for a minute? I mean, how many of you already do this with your kids? And what do your kids think?
I have some kids that love it, some
Yeah.
kids that hate it.
Yeah, other kids will just throw in one loop and be like, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the real world right there, right? That's the real,
Some kids who like wrote a really nice tune and they put vocals in it.
Yeah.
right. I guarantee you that behind the kid that says, I don't like it or I don't want to do it, there's baggage there that needs to be unpacked to figure out why. Because I truly believe with every fiber of my being that every single kid's creative. They may have been told along the way that they're not, or that they, for lack of a better term, that they suck, right? And that's probably the baggage that they're like, I'm not good at this. No, everybody's good at it. But yeah, anyway, so writing introductory music for a podcast, writing outro music for a podcast is kind of a fun part for the kids. It will not. A lot of teachers think, oh, that's the hard part. It isn't. That's the easy part for the kids. What we're going to do next is the hard part. All right. And so this is kind of a get up and stretch and get out of this room for a little while before lunch activity. So here's what we're going to do. If you like, I can assign groups, but I would like you to group up into pairs of two, however you want to do it, pair of two. And what your object is to write a script. And so before we get into that, I'm going to give you a little bit of a prompt. We're going to give you paper. You can go anywhere in this building. You can go anywhere in the building to write it. But I'm going to give you what the prompt is, okay? Because it's easy to say write a script. So what I do here in this lesson on script writing is, and by the way, you're about to do the hardest part of the podcast. This is it. This is the hardest thing, is to actually, write the script. So for this podcast, I'd like you to choose Black History Month as the subject of your podcast. Today is the start of Black History Month. So I'm talking like right now, this is what I would be doing in my class, Black History Month. So what I would like you to do between now and 10:15 with you and your partner is you can stay here, you can go into the cafeteria, you can go into the recording studio, you can find any space you want. And between the two of you, I would like you to write what I would consider not what I would consider, a script. All right, then the point of the guide rails for you is that the script should be no more than 3 minutes long, right? So I'm not asking you to write a whole thing, but what I'd like you to do is pick a prominent figure, and a prominent African American that you would like to celebrate for Black History Month. It can be a musician, a playwright, an architect, a politician, whoever it is. And on your phones, on the computers, again, wherever you want to go, do a little bit of research. And I have a Black History Month lesson plan that's in here, a project. So I'm going to bring it up right now in case you need inspiration. So if you go into the demo site and scroll down, I think it's like all near the bottom, there's projects. And then in the projects, it's like the 7th project down, I think, is Black History Month. And these are the requirements. All right, so just to give you prompts, if you need to, you can look at it. And I want their name, obviously, when they were born, where they grew up, information about their childhoods, like what schools did they go to? Did they have a rough childhood? Where educational information. Did they go to school? Did they go to college? What did they do? Anything about their personal life, and so like the stuff that would go in their obituary, if you will. And then what career achievements, stories of adversity they endured, interesting facts, people they influenced, impact on society, and then maybe some relevant audio clips. So I saw a Nina Simone on somebody's screen, right? That's perfect, absolutely perfect. So what the podcast will be, 3 minutes long script. You need to write an actual episode, right? Welcome to our Black History Month podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Nina Simone. Then maybe you write in your, I'm going to play a clip of Nina Simone, right? I'm going to play this song. And then, okay, Nina Simone was born on blankety blank, blankety blank. So I'm asking you to do a little bit of research, a little bit of work, and to create it. Does that sound fair? Does this sound like a doable task? So right now it's 9:36. I'm going to give you till 10:20. So about 35, 40 minutes to go find a spot. There's paper up at the front. There's a ream of paper. If you have a pen, great. If you want to sit here and write it, if you have like Google Docs or something, you're more than welcome to sit here. But find a space and we'll reconvene here at 10:20. And then what we're going to do at 10:20 is go over those scripts. Because what we can do, that's going to be the podcast we're going to make today. You're going to record this podcast. You're going to put in the music. You're going to find the clips. And you're going to assemble this podcast today. So you'll walk out with a Black History Month podcast. And the point of that, and we'll share them at the end, the point of that is I want you to go do this with your kids. I think it's a really great way to celebrate rather than coloring in. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was teacher and they had like Black History Month activities, they would give you like coloring sheets. The hell is that? You're going to color in Booker T. Washington or Martin Luther King and that's Black History Month? That's ridiculous, right? I think podcasting is one of many ways, but you know what I'm talking about. That's the way schools do it. It's crap. Doing a podcast about it is so much more interesting and it really brings it to life. So I'll shut up now. Go find a place. If you don't want to be in here, you're more than welcome to get up and walk around. But at 10:20, we're going to have a script. Yep.